Hello and welcome to Healthy Bites. My name is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Now, I wanted to reflect on an episode that we had on a week or so ago with Dr. Carmel Harrington about SIDS, and it was quite a confronting episode. If you haven't listened to it, I would recommend that you go back and have a listen to it. And Carmel shared her own personal story, which led her to the professional journey she has been on for the last 30 plus years. And it was quite a confronting story of her own child dying from sudden infant death syndrome at the age of 2. And what really struck me about it was when she said that the advice her doctors gave her was to just forget about it and get on with it and go and have another baby. And that raised some issues which I wanted to share with you as well, because in my own life, I have been fortunate enough to have 2 wonderful daughters who are now aged, I think almost 35, about to turn 35 and 31. But between the 2, we had a stillborn. And that's not something that you expect when you are pregnant, to have your child, which you're excited and looking forward to, the birth of a new child, to have a stillborn. And this happened literally in the last week of our pregnancy. And of course, this would have happened 33 odd years ago. And what triggered the reaction that I wanted to share with you was when Carmel said, the doctor had said, just get on with it and have another baby, because quite frankly, how we deal with these kind of traumas is really important. And I'm fortunate enough to have my wife guide us through this one, because my initial response to that at that time was not too dissimilar to the doctors. And that was, I just wanted to get on with life and let's move on and let's have another baby and all this. And because my wife had an experience in her own family where a stillborn had been ignored and life had, in inverted commas, just got on with it, this remained something that was unresolved, and she was determined for us to deal with this in an appropriate way. And I am eternally grateful to her now 33 years later for having done that, because if we hadn't done that, either our relationship probably wouldn't have survived, or we would still be picking up the pieces or coming back to it as an unresolved issue. And what did we do? Well, firstly, we gave the child a name. It was called Talia, and she was. We looked at her and we held her and we dealt with the issue. We then went and had a grief counselling, which was the most amazing experience. I mean, we had the most wonderful grief counsellor, who we had actually 2 incredible sessions with, one that lasted for 4 hours and resulted in a huge amount of tears, and a whole lot of issues were brought up and talked about, and it was an incredible experience for me, because at that point I just wanted to, if someone had died, then I just wanted to move on. I didn't want to confront the grief of that loss, of that death. And this was really a very confronting experience. And then we went back for another few sessions, and it kind of gave me permission to acknowledge that people have died. You know, when people die, when a partner dies or when a child dies, people almost don't want to discuss it with somebody and would rather pretend that it didn't happen. And whether that's within a relationship or whether that is amongst friends or relatives, it is something that I believe is really important to confront, or at least acknowledge in a respectful way and deal with, and not pretend that it didn't happen, because the death of someone close to you, and when we're talking about the death of a child, and I mean, whether it's an unborn, a child that hasn't been born yet in a stillbirth, whether it's a miscarriage, that's another experience that can be very traumatic. Whether it's a stillborn, that of course is incredibly traumatic, and then the death of a child, a young child, particularly as Carmel experienced, which was largely unexplained, as it was our stillborn, largely unexplained. But what it made us realise was how precious life is, and how our death is something we do need to confront, and we do need to discuss in a respectful and caring and acknowledge acknowledge its existence. And that was very empowering. And I'm eternally grateful to my wife for having made me, literally, or guided me is perhaps a better way, for her to have guided me through this and for me to have gone along with it, and to be eternally grateful for her to have done that and for us to have done that together. Because these kind of events are events which can either bring people closer together or drive them apart. And ultimately, death is something we all will confront at some point. Acknowledging that and learning how to deal respectfully with that is something that is important. I know that as a result of that grief counselling that I did go through at that point, when I have people that I meet who someone close has died with, or even in my surgery where I've had patients that I've had relationships with for many years, and I know that their partner may have died, I will sometimes just say to them, in passing, when I'm asking, "How are you?" which often runs off the tongue very easily and has very little meaning, to sometimes say, "Look, how long's it been since so and so has died?" And just acknowledging that this was a real event that had a significant effect on their life is actually, well, on one hand you might feel it's opening up an old wound, but on the other hand, if you do it respectfully and in a sympathetic way, it at least acknowledges that you're acknowledging that this huge event has occurred in their life. And if they do want to say anything, that's fine. They have permission to say it. And if they don't, they'll just brush it off and say, "Oh, look, I'm fine, it's all past," etc. But I just wanted to share that experience with you because it was such a powerful episode, that one, and I'm very grateful to Carmel for sharing such an event publicly with us. And it had such a profound effect on her. It had such a profound effect on us in our family and in my relationship with my own wife, who I'm very fortunate now to have been married to for the last 36 years and feel closer to now than I ever have. So that's a very important story in our story. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you. I hope this finds you well. This is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Until next time, be well. This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express their own opinions, experiences and conclusions.